You have questions, we have answers. This is Jane Miller.
And this is Ken Miller. Welcome to our show, all about real estate with Ken and Jane. Returning as our guest this Sunday morning, we have Austin, a.k.a. John Kosik, who is the Emergency Management Coordinator for East Brunswick Township. John, thanks so much for coming back on this Sunday morning.
Great to be back.
Yeah.
Let's get it done.
Yeah, it's great to have you back.
I like it.
So we were talking last week about your all-important role as the Emergency Management Coordinator. And just as a recap for the benefit of the listeners that didn't hear last week's show, can you please just explain summarize what the role of the Emergency Management Coordinator is?
Sure. Yeah, to read the Reader's Digest version, right?
Yeah, the short version.
Is that still out, by the way, Reader's Digest?
I don't know, actually.
Right?
National Geographic, I don't know that.
Okay. Yeah, so the compressed short version is emergency management plans for, responds to, recovers from, and tries to prevent incidences of big nature for the township. We keep an emergency management plan together that we're able to keep all of the entities working together, including the public, is a big part of the plan, to be able to keep the town running safe and keep the town normal. That's our goal. We want to get back to normalcy as much as possible. Mm-hmm. That's what we want to do.
Yeah, that's right. And so your role is you're like kind of the interface between the police, the fire department, the rescue squad, the hazmat people. So you guys kind of
correct. We're the hub of the office for those agencies to report to for big emergencies. Their regular day-to-day operations, that's what they do. They have executive leaders in all those agencies. That's what they do. When things start to expand out, when their agency may get taxed with resources and they're running short, then the plan comes in. And the plan it very expands out. So if we have to have in town 30 fire trucks, there's a plan for that. If we need 150 police officers, there's a plan. It's part of our plan. Okay, if we need 10 ambulances, there's a plan for that. It's part of our plan. It's part of our complete emergency operation plan. Our plan now with the computer, it's on the computer. But if you were to print it out, it would be like a phone book.
Okay,
that's how thick the plan would be.
Yeah. Now, is that something that the residents have access to?
No, that's one thing that's confidential. Okay. That the plan does. We can talk about it.
You can talk about it. You're right.
Wants to talk about it, but in the fine details on that, there's personal information, there's telephone numbers, there's critical infrastructure that we have in town. We identify critical infrastructure that if an event should take place in our town, we want to make sure that infrastructure gets a closer eye, because if that critical facility gets affected by whatever the emergency is, that's going to have a trickle-down effect to affect many residents and or operations that goes on.
Right. So there's confidential information and proprietary, because you don't want it to fall in the wrong hands. Because it kind of gives you, the plan gives the strategies that you guys would use to combat not only natural disasters, but also terrorism, cybersecurity. Threats and the whatnot. So there's criminal. Right. So you have to. So obviously that's why it's confidential and needs to stay.
And that plan came into a big effect during Y2K. Remember the Y2K?
Yes, there was a big
Remember Y2K?
That was supposed to be a big thing. Where 2000, there was everything was a prediction that the world was going to that there was going to be a problem. With all the computers were going to crash and the world was
So that was 25 years ago. And so we planned for that. We had special planning for that. 3 years prior up to Y2K.
Wow.
And the night of Y2K, 1999, right? When I tell you all hands on deck, all hands on deck. Wow. When I tell you all hands on deck, because traffic lights are going to go out on the highway. Yeah. Telephone systems are going to shut down. They're waiting for that.
Because of the going from the
99 to 2000, right?
It's like reset everything.
So that was, when I tell you heavy response, that was heavy response. And then 2000 came and
nothing happened.
Nothing happened, right? We all had a good time.
And then you had the predictions that I think like in 2011 or 2012 that the world was going to end. There was all those. You get all that.
Yeah. And the interesting thing, as I mentioned in the earlier episode, our job is to stay in the darkness. So you have the light. And I can't tell you how many of those things keep popping up. But credibility, and we've been so good with technology coming ahead and information sharing that we do. Something comes up, we share it, and we're able to tell each other, that's not happening. They said it was going to, and one of the good things, Y2K was good. It became 2000 in other parts of the world before it became 2000 here. They were fine, right? Yeah. We're seeing Peter Jennings doing his thing, and he's there, and everything's fine. And like this country rolled over. Yeah. So we're a little more. I was never on the edge of that, because I could not understand why with the technology we had back then. And we, again, like I tell you, if we know something's coming, we shouldn't fail. We shouldn't fail at hurricanes or blizzards. We shouldn't fail at that. And our plan has it set that we shouldn't fail at an earthquake or a tornado or a terrorist attack. We need to respond to that quicker, but our plan has a place for that. But there's always somebody trying to throw something in there to make us fail. They want us to fail.
Yeah, even 9/11, even though that was a national tragedy, there were warning signs in place that the people taking flying lessons, but only not being concerned at how to land, and there was just all these little things. So it's just something. There's always warning signs.
So we had a plan with the prior World Trade Center bombing that a lot of the victims need to go to the hospital. So a plan was put in since that bombing into 9/11, and that plan was put into place. And we were part of that plan, believe it or not. One of the procedures were to bring victims across the river, bring them into New Jersey, and get them to area hospitals. And we have the hospital here in New Brunswick, Robert Wood, St. Peter's, JFK. They were in that plan to do that, but sadly there weren't that many victims because the buildings had collapsed, and those victims became fatalities. But we're part of. Again, we look at it how it scopes out and scopes back in, it expands out and brings in. We were part of that plan. We still are part of that plan. It's a mass casualty plan. If something should happen, that doesn't have to be in New York City. It could be North Jersey or South Jersey. And we have the conduit coming up to the area hospitals that we have a plan for that. A single phone call, and we can have intersections opened up. A text message telling us that we have a condition that we need to have area trauma centers open. We all do that. Information sharing and mutual aid, they call it. We work well with
That's great. So the mutual aid extends to the first responders. It also could extend to the fire departments and maybe police if need be. Or it's
utilities.
Utilities, yeah.
Private entities. Okay. As late as Friday, I approved the plan for one of our dialysis center, and in their plan, they're okay and willing to be an emergency medical center for the town if it needed it. In the event we had a widespread emergency. So we touch public and private entities. Our partnerships are very tight with each other, very tight with each other. It came into place in 2008 and 2009. We had H1N1, which was a virus that we had to give out the vaccinations to the school students and to the public. We had a plan that come up that we were able to give the vaccinations inside the schools, during the school day. And then what we had done was we had a vacant store. Now that's public, We had private schools. We had St. Bartholomew School. We had private schools that got involved. But then the public. Now let's get into the public side. The Brunswick Square Mall. They had a vacant store that we had a partnership. We said we want to give vaccinations during the H1N1.
Sure.
We vaccinated over 4,000 people in one day at the mall in a vacated store, and it worked out good. Plenty of parking. They came into the mall. The weather was. They got out of the weather, and we gave vaccinations, and it happened to be a record store that was vacant. So that's the partnership between public and private, and that's the way it is all the way in emergency management. If I need buses right now, the township has 3 small buses for seniors. If I need to move a lot of people, I have partnerships with, private bus companies to come in. That we can move, between the Board of Ed buses for the school. Coach busing, we have buses. So there's many of that in our plan. We have many of mutual aid agreements and partnerships.
So it's elaborate. It's really, so you're not caught with, I didn't think about that. Or you're trying not, the plan counts for those.
When I tell you out of the box.
That's out of the box.
I mean, we could podcast from here. It's the week after Easter. We could podcast to Christmas. And I'm still not totally out of the box.
Yeah, that's really elaborate. Wow. Like we were saying, the plan, if you were to print it out, it's like a phone book. So
exactly.
It needs, because it's elaborate with all those intricacies and really going beyond, going the next mile of thinking of transportation. And last week's show we spoke about if there's a traffic hazard accident and it becomes a hazmat issue, and how that how everything can snowball from one thing to the next, and how you have to really keep cross all T's and dot all I's. So that's something, and I think it's so important because we spoke about it last week, but it's so important for our listeners out there everywhere to have their own individualized emergency plan, whether they have to be stuck, whether they're confined to the house or they have to evacuate. So if you want to just refresh everybody about that.
So we'll hit the free refresh button, ready.gov, ready.gov for everybody to go to. It's a great location for you to go and figure out how to build your plan. The short answer for the plan would be make a plan that is good for your family, that's customized to your family. Don't forget your pets. Don't forget elderly neighbors, all right? Because they may not be your family, but when you're walking out the door, you know that, Mrs. X lives next door and she's alone and we need to leave. Is she covered? Okay? So make a plan. I strongly suggest that your plan, you have your important documents, your important account numbers. You had mentioned that, Google Drive set up, which is a great idea. Send it to the cloud. If you can make a copy, put a copy. A remote location is great. Box in a bank, family, secured a piece of baggage in your trunk of your car, so you have it. These things are important not only for the big widespread incident that you think of, but the simple incident of you may have to evacuate your home because of something else in the neighborhood. God forbid your neighbor's house catches on fire.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. And the heat radiates to your house. You had nothing to do. You were sitting home watching, Fox Sports, and all of a sudden, what happens? You got to leave your house because your neighbor's house caught on fire and it created your electric to go out.
And while we're talking about fires, we were chatting off the air this morning about the fact there was a change. It used to be statewide that every house had to have a mandatory 2 ABC fire extinguisher, but now that law got reversed, so now it's not a requirement unless the municipality makes it a requirement for their township.
Correct.
But now in East Brunswick, I guess the thought process in East Brunswick by canceling that is to say that they want to encourage the residents to call 911 rather than try to figure out how to properly utilize the fire extinguisher.
Yeah, I was proponent. I'm a licensed fire inspector, and I never enforced that because since you're this tall in school, what do they tell you when there's a fire? Get out.
Get out.
Right? So now we're telling you we're making you have to have this extinguisher and making you mount it in your kitchen and tell you if there's a fire, we want you to use it. We're not going to show you how to use it. We want you to use it. Get out of here. Just get out and call 911. That's, so that's not, I'm glad that's gone. I'm glad they took that off the books.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been a realtor for 16 years, right? We've been doing a lot of fire inspection. Lucky nobody asked me how to operate that.
Yeah.
Right.
I wouldn't know how, right?
But by the same token, it's so important to have the smoke detectors and the carbon monoxide, which are life safety things.
Carbon monoxide, yes.
You'd be surprised how many homes you go to that the people don't have the carbon monoxide, which is
correct.
Sad. So
or they take the battery out.
Yeah, they take the battery out or can't be right. So those are just two critical things. We always do a couple of shows each year on the fire safety, and that's
test your detectors. And my recommendation for those that may have hearing impairments, double up your detectors. Double them up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right,
I did that test on my mother. My mother had a hearing. She would take that nap after all my children in the afternoon. I set the alarm off. Don't hear it. I put a second alarm in. Woke right up. So I recommend that a double alarm for those with hearing impairments.
Oh, good point.
Yeah.
Double alarms. We didn't think about it.
Right.
All right, very good. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back after these messages. Okay, welcome back to our show. We're joined again this Sunday morning by John Kosik, or formerly known as Austin, but I like to call him John. That's the name everybody knows.
Don't forget, you want to marry me, bury me, or sue me, it's Austin. That's my legal name.
Well, you know what? Don't
else,
advertise that because if you just go by John, nobody will know your name. You have no legal worries then.
Exactly.
So that's, so it's been quite, your role is so important, and we should mention that you're being recognized, rightfully so, by the East Brunswick Education Foundation for your dedicated service for 43 plus years. I'll say plus years because before you were in this role, you were already affiliated in the EMT, and as we spoke about last week's show.
Yes.
So it's just priceless, the amount of service you provide to the community. We can't put a price tag on it because keeping us safe is such an important thing.
One of the things is that, like you just say, what do you do? People say to me, what do you do? That's a good feeling because that means your life is normal. So I'm doing it right.
Yes.
Yeah. If you see me out there and, some people, when the schools came about, right, after Columbine incident in 98, right, and we had to go into the schools because the schools never heard of emergency planning or, that was a whole new avenue for them, right? It was interesting when we got into the schools to teach them about emergency preparedness. And if you don't have a safe school, you can't teach.
Yeah.
So you want to have the great teachers and have a great education system, but if the school isn't safe, and, thankfully we got a great security system that I don't lose any sleep over the security in the schools, none whatsoever. So one of the things I want to do is put my head on a pillow at night and sleep. And that's what keeps me rolling in my job. I have that aha moment on why I took this job. okay? Why I want to be in this job. All right, and that was it. I want to be able to put my head on a pillow at night and know that I know when I get up in the morning and look in the mirror, what can I do today to make everything better? Not that I'm a superhero by no means, and not that I'm an expert. The only thing I'm an expert in is I know who the experts are. Yeah. Okay, I'm not the expert. I know who they are, and I know who to go to. If I know that, I can turn around and make sure the town, which 24 square miles, about 50,000 residents, is safe. And when I go home at night and look in the mirror, go to bed, I know I did everything I could that day. I'm not perfect by no means, but I know I made my best effort to do that, and I can go to bed and, with confidence, knowing that we're in a good place. With the schools, we're solid. We are so solid in the schools. I'm very happy that what the schools have decided to do, they've done, and the children are safe. And I know that if something happens there, there's a great plan to respond to.
Yeah,
one thing is we move into this town ourselves, right? When our daughter was 2.5. So we came here because of the school. And I remember years back, there was a school shooting or something happening in Connecticut.
Well, that was, I think, I was referring to.
When Maria was in the elementary school, I just remember I heard on the radio.
Sandy Hook, Newtown.
Sandy Hook, Newtown. As soon as I heard on the radio, my instinct, I drove straight to the school. I didn't know I was on my way to appointment. I would just drove straight to school, and the school was secured. Everything was fine. One thing many things I'm grateful. We are grateful. But one of the things we're very grateful is for the safety. Safety for our kids, safety for our residents. In East Brunswick, I never worried. And my job, I go out nighttime. Sometimes I visit clients, believe it or not. 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock is often, right?
Right, absolutely.
And I never worried. I always feel safe.
And East Brunswick was one of the first township in New Jersey to have the police officers at a school.
Yes.
Which is commendable.
Yes.
And I have to tell you a funny story. Jane she's right. She's always safe by the police. But one time I got my heart up. She was out one time at a client's house, and I got a phone call from the police department. It's probably about, 9 o'clock at night or something. And they said, "Oh, is this Ken Muller?" I said, "Yes." And is your car, do you have and I thought there was something. When I get a call from the police, I thought something happened. Either my wife was involved in a car accident or something bad happened. But it turns out her car was parked in a very unusual position off the side of the road, kind of extending itself. So they were trying to find out where the heck, where she was, so they could get in touch with her and tell her to move the car. So, but that was the only moment that we had a little scare, but in a good way, but a good comfort to know.
Right, exactly, yeah.
I have to say, right, if the real estate commission have to set a special test for driving, I would never get a license to practice real estate. But that was small street, very small street, right, in the Lawrenceburg area. I don't know what I was thinking. I thought I parked right, but apparently I parked right in the middle.
Or at least she was like 4 feet from the curb, so kind of which would be the middle of the road.
I thought I was.
It's good though that they had your back and contacted you.
And the police was worried, thought something happened to me.
Right.
Because they see the car and they feel something. Nobody in the right mind would have parked the car that way. So they thought I might be forced or something. So they worried, they're calling, and then they realize, oh, it's only Jane.
That's good.
Yeah. So also last week we spoke about the training on the drills. We spoke about the meetings you guys do. Do you guys actually do training drills as well as the tabletop meetings?
Correct. So the type of drills we do is there's tabletops, there's functional, and then it's called full scale. An example of a full scale drill. In June of 2001, we did a full scale drill that was planned for a year at the Brunswick Square Mall. And there was two objectives for that drill. One was to respond to when FBI was involved for evidence collection. We used the Macy's area for a package that was left that had exploded. It was the drill. It was only a drill. And the other part of the drill, the objective was to be able to decontaminate large numbers of people because the county has purchased a new decontamination system. Fast forwarding, or let's rewind back to June of 2001, we go through that, okay? Fast forwarding, what happened after June 2001 was September 11, 2001. So the system that we had, the system that we tested, the drill that we had, the year we used building up to that drill, we tabletopped it, we functioned it, then we full-scaled it. That decon system, decon 10,000 people at Liberty State Park on 9/11.
Wow.
That came over on the ferries.
Wow.
That system that in East Brunswick, New Jersey, we trained with all those entities in June of 2001, in September 11, 2001, decanned 10,000 people. So that's our training. That's what we do. We do the tabletop, we do the functional, and then we're going to do the full scale chat. And so we do that. We've done that throughout my career. We're currently working on one now. We want to build up drill. So, but one of the things about drilling is we have actual occurrences that you don't have time to drill because we're dealing with actual occurrences. Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, training is paramount, and we do a lot of training. Through our police department, through Chief Lasacco and Deputy Coordinator Jay Safama, we do a lot of training internally and then externally going out. So it's very important for us.
And you're a community outreach person too, because you mentioned off the air that I guess you do a lot of events at the senior center. So what's your talk about that? What's your role? With that?
So you contact our office, my office. Through the East Brunswick website, eastbrunswick.org or ebpd.net. I have a regular page. And we'll do any program we want. Talk to the chamber, talk to whomever, the seniors, talk to the seniors yearly, if not bi-yearly. Programs roll out and give, self-emergency management, where you can do self, youth groups, whatever you want. We can definitely provide that for you. There's no problem whatsoever.
The schools.
And, I do a lot with the religious communities, with the temples and the churches and center, everything. We have them come in as a group. We do tabletops with them also, and tabletop to them for violence in the houses of worship, and offer them training, free training, give them guidance on where they can go for federal training, and complete community outreach. Whatever the community wants to, if they have a question, and if we can't handle it, I'll give them the answer, and if it's not available, I'll throw the information out to our people to see if it can be made available.
Yeah. And what's the best way to get in touch with you for the listeners out there that are in East Brunswick listening?
Yeah, so I could be emailed at jkosik@ebpd.net, jkosik@ebpd.net, or you can call my office at 732-390-6947, 732-390-6947. I always get back to you. It does go to my cell phone after so many, I think 4 or 5 rings if I'm not in my office.
Sure.
So call and but if you have an emergency, 911, call 911.
Yeah, don't call you.
I get a number of calls on my, because my phone is listed as emergency management in the directory, and I got people calling for emergencies when I just hang up and call 911.
Yeah.
And the reason I tell them to hang up and call 911 is because when you go 911 in New Jersey, you're going to get an answer. It may not be in East Brunswick, but you're going to get an answer from a 911 center, and that's what we want people to get an answer, because when you call up on your phone, even your cellular phone, the 911 center has a lot of information about you already, your location, your callback number, your address. So in case something should happen and you lose connection, at least we know where we can send somebody to find out what's going on. So we want you to call 911.
So that's the key with the network. They have all that.
Yeah, and you call 911. And we're working on getting text to 911 very shortly. So that's going to happen,
Right. So I guess your typical day varies, right? That was one of my questions for you. What is your typical day like? But there's probably not a typical day.
So
never be a typical day.
Yeah, so right, you don't, when you wake up in the morning and come to work, you don't know what it's going to be. So I along with emergency management, my other role is I manage the township's radio system for the responders and the whole network for the town, the whole radio system for the town. So there's a lot of moving parts, It's in a sense of you don't know what you're going to walk into every day. I may have something scheduled to be here for today, and all of a sudden I get diverted off because something had happened, and I got to prioritize real quick. It's a juggling game, prioritizing what you need to do, but you have to do that. You have to move on the fly, without a doubt. That's I'm a hockey fan, and moving on the fly is something you want to do.
Well, you're going to be happy then that there's going to be 2 ice rinks coming.
I am. I'm very happy.
Yeah,
yes.
they should be ready by this. Hopefully, by the end of this year, right, or the fall. That's what they're projecting. So that's part of that whole redevelopment, which is exciting news, especially for the skaters. It'll be for hockey, for ice skating, for the public, figure skating. So there's a lot of things, and
more event for you.
I have
more events to manage. The whole redevelopment is exciting. A lot of high end commercial shops plus residential. So so there's more population to some degree, but it's all balanced, and that's part of.
A very close friend who was a professional hockey player, and his family is my chosen family. We hang out in Plum, and we talk about it all the time. And it's one thing in this business is having family, close friends and family, because there's things you need to talk about, right? There's things that. One of the things for this whole business is the mental health capacity, right? Mm-hmm. The responders, it just seems to be, they're human. And people need to realize that they need to be able to have that close relationship and be able to do what they need to do with, their families, and they can't be forgotten about. And because, it starts from the dispatchers who are the first responders. Because they're getting the call, they're actually giving you direction, all the way down to, to the end game when you get to the hospitals, which are the second responders, because they're receiving the incident. But that mental health problem, that's one of the things in our plan. We address that to make sure we have incidences. We make sure that those people that have incidents go for a debriefing, because that's one of the things we need to keep the mental health up for the responders and the people. Because through your career, you're going through all of this, and then what's going to happen is that's just going to saturate you, and then we want that. We want that. We want the people to go home at night and be okay, because their your worst day is their worst day all the time. They're seeing this. They've seen this stuff.
And the stress is post-traumatic stress. It's almost PTSD. Like being in a war 100%. Situation, which it is. So, so stressful.
So, and I'm blessed to have close friends. I'm blessed to have, really good people that,
so there's a whole, really that's comforting to know that there's a plan in place for counseling and services for the first responders, the police, the fire that experience these traumatic events.
Absolutely.
So that's great. Unfortunately, we are out of time. We want to thank you again so much, John.
Thank you.
For being our guest and sharing all this insightful information. All right, we'll see everyone next week. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Thank you.